Okay, you think the French would learn. In World War I, they set all their forts facing Germany and very few forts facing Belgium. World War II, they think up the clever Maginot Line, which is a series of strong fortifications right across German frontier and weak fortifications right across the Belgian frontier. Clever, huh? Well, in 1940, the Germans decided that it was time to knock out the lowlands, that is the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. So, Germany invades Luxembourg, there's not much of a fight. They also invade the Netherlands. They move up through here, and there is a bit of resistance. But eventually, blitzkrieg seems to work, and as you see here, the city of Rotterdam in the Netherlands after attack by the Germans. And the Germans also invaded Belgium. They invaded Belgium, and there was also a little bit of fighting. There, in World War I, there had been the German attack on Liège that had been halted for over a week. However, when the Germans reached Liège in World War II, they had this new blitzkrieg tactic, and in fact, the Battle of Liège, or the Battle of Eben-Emael, was one of the greatest known victories by the Germans in early World War II. Here's some German troops in Belgium with a artillery piece in western Belgium. Soon Belgium had been taken completely over, and now the Germans were ready to move on into France. Do you recognize this? If you don't, that's fine. It's not exactly a famous landmark, but it is pretty well known. It's the Arc of Triumph, or Arc de Triomphe, in Paris, France. And you might recognize these soldiers down here. German soldiers. Yes, some people call it the week that France fell, because unlike at the Marne in World War I, there would be no turning back the German army. France fell within a very short time, and the Germans almost completely wiped out French army. Now, the British army was in France at the same time too, and so the French and British were trying to get away. And unlike in World War I, when the Germans tried to sweep down and take Paris and all the other towns in the Ardennes forest and the Meuse area, they instead went straight for the ports, because they knew that that was where the tactical advantage was held. And so one of the most heroic parts of the war, although it's not very heroic, it's hailed as an Allied victory, but it's not very victorious at all. It's a retreat. The Battle of Dunkirk, which really wasn't a battle. It was mainly British and French people, or soldiers, trying to board whatever ship they could get on. First they got on the big ships, the big Navy ships, and then they started getting on the smaller ships, and soon it was like they were cramming people into fishing boats to go across the English Channel to England, because they wanted to get as many people over to England as they could, and before the German armies surrounded them. And it was quite a heroic feat, and actually was a tactical advantage, but not necessarily an aggressive tactical advantage. The Germans really won the day there. However, they failed to capture the larger bulk of the Allied army in France. Germans also invaded Denmark, and it surrendered with the morning that the Germans invaded. Surrendered without a fight, basically. And it continued to go under German occupation. However, the British and the French sent a relief expedition to Norway when the Germans invaded Norway in the same year, 1940. And here's the German soldiers running through a village in Norway. Eventually, Norway was captured by the Germans, and it would be held and occupied till later on in the war, when actually the Russians came and invaded Norway. And we're going to talk more about that as well as time goes on. But suffice to say, the battle for the Western Europe, which had taken almost 5 years, in about 4 to 5 years in World War I, took a couple months in World War II. And it was just because of this massive German Blitz army, this army that had Panzers, these tanks. They had Stukas and Junkers, which were the planes, and they had men that were ready. They had the Sturmabteilungen, which had men that were ready to just sweep across and destroy their enemies within minutes and hours. And Hitler was ready to take on England now, Great Britain. But first, obviously, since it's across the English Channel, he had to bomb it in order to destroy it so he could invade with his land army. And this is where we see one of the most decisive battles in the history of the world, the Battle of Britain, which the next video will try and cover. But I hope you learned a lot from this video, and hope you find the irony in the fact that French and the Belgians and the Dutch were just no match for the Germans, whereas there had been a Marne in World War I, there would be no Marne in World War II. And the German government set up a kind of a vassal government, so to speak, in southern France called the Vichy government, which was kind of like France, free France, with German leaders. So, you know, not really free. And so Vichy France is set up in southern France.